She bought the ruins for nothing. A burned bakery. A desperate gamble. Then she opened the old brick oven, and everything she thought she knew shattered. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, what would you do if you found something that didn't belong to you but could save your life? The folding chair creaked under Julia Martinez as she shifted her weight, trying to ignore the knot in her stomach. Around her, the municipal auction hall buzzed with voices, contractors in work boots, investors in pressed shirts, people who looked like they belonged here. Julia didn't belong here. She belonged at the diner, serving coffee and forcing smiles at customers who never tipped. Or at the laundromat, folding other people's clothes for $12 an hour. Or at home with Lily, helping with homework she barely remembered how to do herself. But desperation had brought her here. The envelope in her purse held $3,200 in cash. 3 years of saving every spare dollar, skipping meals, wearing shoes until the soles separated, telling Lily, maybe next birthday, so many times the words had lost their meaning. It was supposed to be for Lily's medical bills, the surgery the insurance wouldn't cover, the specialist who might finally explain why her daughter's headaches came in waves that left her crying in dark rooms. But last week, their landlord had taped an eviction notice to the door. 30 days. And Julia realized that without a roof over their heads, medical bills wouldn't matter. Next item, the auctioneer called, his voice cutting through her thoughts. Commercial property at 447 Maple Street. Former bakery. Fire damage. Sold as is. A photo appeared on the screen behind him. Julia's breath caught. The building looked like something from a nightmare. Blackened brick, boarded windows, the front door charred and hanging crooked on its hinges. But above the wreckage, she could see the bones of something that had once been beautiful. Art Deco curves in the facade. A hand-painted sign, half burned. Sweet, the rest was gone. Starting bid is $5,000, the auctioneer said. Silence. No one moved. The auctioneer frowned. Anyone? Commercial lot. Prime location once cleaned up. Still nothing. Julia's hand trembled as she raised it slightly. 3,000. Every head turned. The auctioneer squinted at her. Ma'am, the minimum is 5. That's all I have. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. $3,200. Every cent. Murmurs rippled through the room. Someone behind her laughed quietly. The auctioneer looked at the city clerk, who shrugged with the expression of someone who just wanted to go home. Going once at 3-2, the auctioneer said, skepticism thick in his voice. Twice. Julia held her breath. Sold to the lady in the back. God help you. 20 minutes later, Julia stood outside the building, the deed clutched in her hand like a lottery ticket. It looked worse up close. The smell hit her first old smoke, damp rot, something chemical she couldn't name. The windows on the ground floor were covered with plywood, spray-painted with warnings. Condemned. No trespassing. Enter at your own risk. Behind her, a car door slammed. She turned to see the auctioneer approaching, briefcase in hand. You know what you just bought? He asked, not unkindly. A building. A liability. He pulled a key from his pocket and handed it to her. Fire happened 2 years ago. Owner died. Place has been sitting ever since. City just wants it off the books. Julia took the key. It was warm from his hand. What kind of fire? He hesitated. Officially? Electrical. And unofficially? His expression shifted something between pity and warning. People don't talk about it much, but that bakery was doing real well before it burned, packed every morning. Then one night, the whole place goes up. The owner, how did she die? Smoke inhalation. They found her in the back, near the ovens. He paused. Look, I don't believe in curses or bad luck or any of that. But this place, people say it's better left alone. Julia looked up at the building. Second floor, above the bakery, she could see an apartment. Blackened windows, but the structure looked intact. She thought about the eviction notice, about Lily's pale face when the headaches came, about the stack of bills on their kitchen table that grew taller every week. I don't have a choice, she said quietly. The auctioneer studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Good luck, Miss Martinez. You're going to need it. After he left, Julia stood alone on the cracked sidewalk. The street was quiet. Most of the buildings around her were abandoned too, victims of whatever economic decline had hollowed out this neighborhood. But 2 blocks away, she could see new construction. Glass towers, coffee shops with lines out the door. The city was changing. Maybe this building could change too. She pulled out her phone and took a photo, then sent it to Lily with a message. Our new home. I know it doesn't look like much yet. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, it looks like a haunted house. Then, can I pick my room? Julia smiled despite everything. You can pick any room you want, baby. She pocketed her phone and walked to the front door. The key slid in smoothly, as if it had been waiting. The lock turned with a heavy click. Julia pushed the door open. Inside, darkness swallowed the afternoon light. Dust hung in the air like fog. The floor was littered with debris, burned wood, shattered glass, pieces of equipment she couldn't identify. But as her eyes adjusted, she saw something else. The back wall, barely visible through the shadows. A massive brick oven, original to the building, still standing. Blackened but intact. And even from here, even through all the destruction, Julia could see something. The oven door was open. Just slightly, as if someone had left in a hurry and never closed it, or as if something inside was waiting to be found. Julia's Honda sat in the alley behind the bakery, packed so full the back window was blocked. Everything they owned fit in one car. 2 suitcases of clothes, a box of kitchen supplies, Lily's stuffed animals crammed into a garbage bag, the air mattresses strapped to the roof with bungee cords that looked ready to snap. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. Lily stood at the bottom of the exterior staircase, craning her neck to look up at the apartment door. It's really tall, she said quietly. Just 2 floors, baby. It smells weird. Julia couldn't argue with that. The smoke smell was everywhere in the walls, the air. Probably they're closed by now. We'll air it out, Julia said, trying to sound confident. Open some windows. Get some fans going. Lily nodded, but her hand found Julia's and squeezed tight. They climbed the metal stairs together, each step groaning under their weight. The apartment door was unlocked. Julia had checked it earlier. No one had lived here in 2 years. No one had wanted to. Inside, the space was small but oddly intact. The fire had ravaged the bakery below, but up here, the damage was mostly smoke, blackened walls, stained ceiling, the kind of grime that settled into everything and refused to leave. But the bones were good. Hardwood floors beneath the soot. A kitchen with original cabinets. 2 bedrooms, both tiny, both with windows that overlooked the street. Which one's mine? Lily asked, already moving toward the smaller room. Whichever you want. Lily disappeared inside, and Julia heard her opening the closet, testing the light switch that didn't work, her footsteps echoing in the empty space. Julia stood in the living room, looking around. This was home now. No going back. She pulled out her phone and opened her banking app. Balance: $47.82. $47 to last until her next shift at the diner. She closed the app before the panic could settle in. Mom! Lily's voice carried from the bedroom. There's a mirror in here, but it's broken. Julia walked down the narrow hallway and found Lily standing in front of an old mirror leaning against the wall. A crack ran diagonal across the glass, splitting the reflection into fragments. We can get rid of it, Julia said. Wait. Lily knelt down, peering behind the mirror. There's something stuck back here. She reached into the gap between the mirror and the wall, her small fingers searching. When she pulled her hand back, she was holding a photograph. The edges were curled and smoke-stained, but the image was clear. A woman, maybe 30, standing in front of the bakery. The building looked different, clean, inviting, with flower boxes in the windows and a bright yellow awning. The woman was smiling. Dark hair pulled back, apron dusted with flour, one hand resting on the doorframe like she owned the place. Which, Julia realized, she probably had. Lily turned the photo over. Written in neat handwriting on the back. Grand opening. March 2021. Dreams do come true. Elena. Julia's throat tightened. Who's Elena? Lily asked. I think she's the person who lived here before us. Where is she now? Julia didn't answer right away. She took the photo from Lily's hand, studying the woman's face. She looked happy, proud, like someone who'd worked her whole life for this moment. I don't know, baby. But she did know. The auctioneer's words echoed in her head. They found her in the back, near the ovens. Can we keep it? Lily asked. Julia looked at her daughter's face, hopeful, curious, unaware of the weight this photo carried. Yeah, Julia said softly. We can keep it. They spent the rest of the afternoon hauling boxes up the stairs and trying to make the apartment feel livable. Julia scrubbed the kitchen sink until her hands were raw. Lily swept the floors, pushing soot into piles that seemed to multiply no matter how many times she swept. By evening, they'd set up the air mattresses in the bedrooms and eaten cold sandwiches on the floor because they had no table yet. Lily talked about school starting next week, about whether the other kids would think living in a bakery was cool or weird. Julia listened and smiled and tried not to think about everything that could go wrong. As darkness fell, the apartment grew colder. The heat didn't work. Julia layered blankets on Lily's air mattress and tucked her in, still fully dressed in sweatpants and a hoodie. Mom? Lily's voice was small in the dark. Yeah, baby? What if someone died here? Julia's hand stilled on the blanket. What makes you think that? The picture, and the fire, and the way that man at the auction looked at you when you bought it. Julia sat down on the edge of the mattress, feeling it sink beneath her weight. She wanted to lie, to say everything was fine, that this was just a building, just walls and floors, nothing more. But she'd promised herself years ago that she'd never lie to Lily about the things that mattered. I think someone did, Julia said quietly. The woman in the photo, Elena. Lily was silent for a long moment. Then, do you think she's mad we're here? No, sweetheart, I think. I think she'd want someone to care about this place again. Even if it's us? Especially if it's us. Lily rolled onto her side, pulling the blanket up to her chin. Okay? Julia kissed her forehead and stood to leave. But as she reached the doorway, Lily spoke again. Mom, I'm glad we're here, even if it's scary. Julia's chest tightened. Me too, baby. Later, lying on her own air mattress in the dark, Julia couldn't sleep. The building creaked and settled around her. Wind whistled through gaps in the windows. Somewhere below, in the bakery, something metal shifted with a soft scrape. She thought about Elena, about the fire, about the auctioneer's words. People say it's better left alone. Julia pulled out her phone and Googled, Bakery Fire Maple Street 2023. The results loaded slowly. The first headline made her stomach drop. Local business owner dies in suspected arson. Investigation ongoing. Julia clicked the link, her heart pounding. But before the article could load, her phone battery died. The screen went black. And in the silence that followed, Julia heard it. A sound from downstairs. Faint but unmistakable. The creak of the oven door opening. Julia stood at the top of the stairs, listening. The sound had stopped. Maybe it was nothing. Wind through a broken window, the building settling. Old places made noise, everyone knew that. But her hand still trembled as she gripped the railing. She looked back at Lily's door. Closed. Silent. Then she descended the stairs, each step deliberate. Her phone, flashlight cutting through the darkness. The bakery stretched before her like the ruins of something once loved. Charred counters. Shattered display cases. Equipment twisted and blackened beyond recognition. But in the back, untouched by the worst of the flames, the brick oven stood. Massive. Original to the building. The kind bakers had used 70 years ago, before everything became stainless steel and electric. Its door hung slightly open. Julia's flashlight beam landed on the gap. She hadn't left it that way. Had she? She approached slowly, her breath visible in the cold air. The oven's interior was dark, cavernous. Big enough to stand inside if you bent your head. Julia crouched down and peered in. Nothing. Just soot-blackened brick and the faint smell of old smoke. She started to pull back, but something made her reach inside. Her fingers brushed against cold metal. A handle. She gripped it and pulled, feeling resistance. Then a shift as something heavy slid free from deep inside the chimney. A metal lockbox, about the size of a shoebox, sealed with a combination lock. Julia set it on the floor, her heart hammering. The metal was scorched but intact. Fireproof, she realized. Designed to survive exactly what had happened here. She picked it up, testing its weight. Heavy. Something substantial inside. The next morning, Julia sent Lily to school with the last $5 in her wallet for lunch. Then she spent 3 hours trying to open the lockbox. She tried common combinations. 0000. 1,234. Her birthday, Lily's birthday. Nothing worked. By noon, her fingers ached and her head pounded. She sat on the bakery floor, surrounded by debris, staring at the box like it might offer answers. What are you hiding? She thought about Elena's photo, the date on the back. Grand opening, March 2021. Julia picked up the lockbox again and tried 0321. The lock didn't budge. She tried 32021. Still nothing. Then, almost without thinking, 030121. March 1st, 2021. The lock clicked. Julia's breath caught. She stared at it for a long moment, her hands frozen. This was the point of no return. Whatever was inside this box, it had been hidden for a reason. Locked away in the one place that might survive a fire. She should call the police. Turn it over. Let them handle it. But $47 sat in her bank account. An eviction notice had brought her here, and Lily's medical bills weren't going away. Julia opened the box. Inside, wrapped in plastic bags, were stacks of cash. Hundreds, 50s, 20s. Bound with rubber bands, organized and deliberate. Julia's hands shook as she pulled them out, counting without meaning to. 5,000, 10,000, 20, 30, $47,000. She sat back hard. The money spread across her lap. Her vision blurred. This was impossible. This was a miracle. This was... Her hand brushed something else in the box. A passport. Julia pulled it out and opened it. Elena Vasquez, born 1991. The photo matched the woman from the picture, dark hair, bright eyes, the kind of face that smiled easily. But the passport's expiration date stopped Julia cold. It didn't expire for another 3 years. Elena had been planning to leave. Soon. Julia reached back into the box, her fingers finding one more item. An envelope. Sealed. Thick paper. Her name was written on the front in neat handwriting. To whoever finds this, Julia's throat went dry. She opened the envelope with trembling fingers and unfolded the letter inside. The handwriting was the same as on the passport, careful, deliberate. It began, "If you're reading this, I'm already gone. And they're probably looking for you now, too." Julia read the first line 3 times, her pulse roaring in her ears. The letter continued. "My name is Elena Vasquez. I owned this bakery for 2 years. I loved it more than anything I'd ever built. But loving something doesn't protect it from people who want to take it away. 6 months ago, a man named Vincent Cross offered to buy this building. I said no. He offered again. I said no again. Then the threats started. He said accidents happen to people who don't cooperate. He said fires start in old buildings. He said I should think about what matters more, pride or survival. I tried to go to the police. But Cross owns half this neighborhood. He has people everywhere. I realized I was alone. So I did the only thing I could think of. I hid everything I had. My savings, my documents, everything. This money was supposed to get me out. Start over somewhere he couldn't find me. But if you're reading this, it means I didn't make it. I'm asking you to do what I couldn't. Use this money. Get out. Don't trust anyone who asks about the building. And whatever you do, don't let Cross know you found this." The letter ended there. No signature, no final message, just a warning. Julia sat in the ruins of the bakery, Elena's words burning into her mind. The money was still spread across her lap. $47,000. Enough to change everything. Or destroy everything. Outside, a car engine rumbled to a stop. A door slammed. Footsteps approached the front entrance. Julia shoved the money back into the lockbox, her movements frantic. The door handle rattled. Then a knock. Heavy. Deliberate. "Hello?" a man's voice called. "Anyone home?" Julia's blood turned to ice. She clutched the lockbox to her chest and didn't breathe. The voice came again, closer now. "I'm looking for the new owner, Julia Martinez, right? We need to talk about this property." Julia didn't move. The lockbox pressed against her ribs. The money inside felt heavier than it should. The knocking came again. "Miss Martinez, I saw your car out back. I know you're in there." His voice was smooth, patient, the kind of voice that knew it would get what it wanted eventually. Julia's mind raced. She couldn't let him see the lockbox, couldn't let him know she'd found anything. She shoved the box behind a toppled metal shelf, covering it with a burned sheet of plywood. Then she stood, brushed soot off her jeans, and walked to the door. She opened it just enough to see out. A man stood on the sidewalk. Mid-40s, expensive suit, polished shoes that didn't belong on this street. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Julia Martinez?" he asked. "Yes. My name is David Chen. I work for Cross Development Group." He pulled a business card from his pocket and held it out. "We're very interested in this property." Julia's stomach dropped at the name. Cross. She took the card with steady hands, though everything inside her was screaming. "I just bought it," she said. "I'm not looking to sell." "Of course not." His smile widened. "But I think you'll want to hear our offer. This neighborhood is undergoing major revitalization. We're prepared to pay well above market value. How much? 50,000. Cash. No inspections, no delays. Julia's throat tightened. 50,000. 3,000 more than what she'd just found hidden in the oven. It wasn't a coincidence. That's generous, she said carefully. But I have plans for this place. I understand. Chen's tone didn't change, but something shifted in his expression. However, I should mention buildings like this can be unpredictable. Old wiring. Structural issues. History has a way of repeating itself. The words landed like a threat wrapped in silk. Julia's hand tightened on the door. Are you threatening me? Not at all. He smiled again, just offering friendly advice. The previous owner? Well, you've heard what happened. Tragic accident. We'd hate to see history repeat itself. I think you should leave. Chen studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. Think about it, Miss Martinez, but don't think too long. He tapped the business card she was holding. My number's on there. Call any time. He walked to his car, a black Mercedes parked at the curb, and drove away without looking back. Julia stood in the doorway until the car disappeared. Then she locked the door, slid the bolt, and leaned against it. Her legs were shaking. That night, after Lily was asleep, Julia sat on the floor of the bakery with her laptop. The lockbox sat beside her, still open. Elena's letter spread in front of her. She typed into the search bar. Elena Vasquez, Fire 2023. The first result was a short article from the local paper. Woman dies in bakery fire. Cause under investigation. Elena Vasquez, 32, owner of Sweet Dreams Bakery, was found dead following a fire that destroyed her business early Thursday morning. Preliminary reports suggest an electrical malfunction may have caused the blaze. Authorities are investigating. Julia clicked to the next article, dated 2 weeks later. Bakery fire ruled accidental. No foul play suspected. The fire that claimed the life of Elena Vasquez has been officially ruled accidental, according to the city fire marshal. An electrical short in the building's outdated wiring is believed to be the cause. The case is now closed. Julia stared at the screen. Closed. No investigation, no questions, no justice. Just like Elena had feared. Julia opened a new tab and searched. Vincent Cross Development. The results filled her screen. Cross Development Group. Founded 2015. Specializing in urban renewal and property acquisition. A photo showed Vincent Cross standing in front of a new high-rise, arms crossed, expression confident. He looked like success. He looked like power. Julia scrolled through the company's portfolio. Building after building, block after block. All in this neighborhood. She recognized addresses, the corner store 2 blocks down, the old theater across the street, the apartment complex where she'd almost rented before finding this place. Cross owned half the neighborhood, and he wanted the rest. Julia's hands were shaking as she clicked on the About page. A mission statement appeared. Transforming communities, building futures, creating value where others see only ruins. Beneath it, a quote from Vincent Cross himself. In development, timing is everything. Those who resist progress are often left behind. Julia closed the laptop. She sat in the dark bakery, Elena's letter in her hands, and finally understood. This wasn't just about money. It was about power, control, taking what you wanted from people who couldn't fight back. Elena had fought, and Elena had died. Now Julia held everything Elena had tried to save. The money, the truth, the proof that the fire wasn't an accident. But what could she do with it? If she went to the police, they'd ask where she got it. They'd question why she didn't report it immediately. And if Cross had enough influence to close an investigation into Elena's death, what would stop him from doing it again? If she kept the money and stayed silent, Lily would be safe. They could use it for the surgery, pay off debts, start over somewhere far from here. But Elena would stay buried under a lie. And Cross would keep taking from people who had nothing. Julia thought about Lily upstairs, asleep in a smoke-stained apartment. She thought about the eviction notice that had brought them here. She thought about all the times she'd been powerless, invisible, expendable. And she thought about Elena's last words. "Don't let Cross know you found this." Julia folded the letter carefully and put it back in the lockbox. Then she stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the street. 2 blocks away, construction cranes rose against the night sky. Cross's empire, growing, swallowing everything in its path. Julia pulled out her phone and opened the browser. She typed, "How to report fraud," anonymously. Then, whistleblower protection laws. Then, legal aid for low-income families. The search results loaded, but before she could read them, a notification appeared. A text from an unknown number. "We know you found something. Sell now, or you'll regret it. You have 48 hours. Julia's blood went cold. She looked at the lockbox, then at her phone, then back out the window, where the construction cranes stood like sentries. They were watching. They'd been watching all along. Julia didn't sleep that night. She sat at the window, watching the street below. Every car that passed made her flinch. Every shadow that moved sent her pulse racing. The text message glowed on her phone. "You have 48 hours. 48 hours to decide between survival and silence. Between protecting Lily and honoring Elena." By morning, she'd made no decision at all. Lily left for school with her backpack and a lunch Julia had scraped together from the last of their groceries. "Are you okay, Mom?" Lily asked at the door, her small face creased with worry. "I'm fine, baby. Just tired." "You look scared." Julia knelt down, forcing a smile she didn't feel. "I'm not scared. I'm just thinking about a lot of things. About the bakery." "Yeah, about the bakery." Lily hugged her tight. "It's going to be okay. I know it is." Julia held her daughter, breathing in the smell of her strawberry shampoo, memorizing the weight of her in her arms. "I love you, Lily." "Love you too." After Lily left, Julia locked the door and went downstairs. She needed to work, clear her head, do something with her hands that didn't involve thinking about threats or money or the choice she couldn't make. She started hauling debris from the bakery, floor-charred wood, broken equipment, the remnants of Elena's dream. Each piece felt like a weight lifted. Each bag of trash carried out felt like progress. By noon, she'd cleared half the space. Her back ached. Her hands were blistered. But her mind was quieter. Then, the door opened. Julia spun around. A man stood in the entrance. Not David Chen this time. This man was older, 60s maybe. Silver hair combed back, tailored suit that probably cost more than Julia made in 6 months. He smiled, but it didn't touch his eyes. "Miss Martinez, I apologize for dropping by unannounced." Julia's throat went dry. "Who are you?" "My name is Vincent Cross." The name landed like a punch. He stepped inside, looking around the ruined bakery with the expression of someone inspecting property they already owned. "I wanted to introduce myself personally," he said. "I believe my associate, Mr. Chen, made you an offer yesterday." Julia's hand tightened on the trash bag she was holding. "He did." "And you declined?" "I said I'd think about it." Cross nodded slowly. "That's fair. It's a big decision." He walked further into the space, his polished shoes crunching on debris. You know, I knew the woman who owned this place before you. Elena. Wonderful baker, terrible business person. Julia said nothing. She had vision. Cross continued. But vision without flexibility is just stubbornness. I tried to help her see that. Tried to show her the bigger picture, what this neighborhood could become with the right investment. She didn't want to sell. No, she didn't. Cross stopped in front of the brick oven, studying it. And look where that got her. The words hung in the air like smoke. Julia's pulse hammered. The fire was ruled accidental. It was. Cross turned to face her, his expression unreadable. But accidents happen to people who make poor choices, people who don't understand how the world works. Is that a threat? It's a fact. He pulled an envelope from his jacket and set it on the scorched counter. $50,000. Cash. You sign the papers, take the money, and move on with your life. Your daughter Lily, isn't it? She gets to grow up safe. You get to stop working 3 jobs. Everyone wins. Julia's blood turned to ice. How do you know my daughter's name? Cross smiled. I make it my business to know who I'm dealing with. And I know you're a good mother, Miss Martinez. You've sacrificed everything for that little girl. So I'm confident you'll make the smart choice. And if I don't? His smile faded. This building has a history of fires. It would be a shame if history repeated itself. The threat was clear now. Undeniable. Julia looked at the envelope on the counter, then at Cross, then at the oven behind him, the place where Elena had hidden everything she had, knowing she might not live to use it. If you've been following Julia's story this far, don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because what happens next will show you what real courage looks like when everything's on the line. I need time, Julia said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. You have until tomorrow night. After that, Cross shrugged. Well, let's not think about after that. He walked to the door, then paused. One more thing, Miss Martinez. If you're thinking about going to the police, I wouldn't bother. I've done business with this city for 20 years. I know people, they know me. And they know accidents happen. Then he was gone. Julia stood alone in the bakery, her legs shaking so badly she had to sit down. The envelope sat on the counter. $50,000. More than enough to disappear. Start over. Keep Lily safe. But Elena's voice echoed in her mind. Don't let Cross know you found this. Too late for that. He already knew. Which meant Julia had 2 choices. Take the money and run, or fight and risk everything. That night, after Lily was asleep, Julia sat on the bakery floor with the lockbox. She pulled out Elena's letter and read it again, word by word, searching for something she might have missed. The warning, the threats, the plea for whoever found it to do what she couldn't. Julia turned the page over, and there, at the very bottom in tiny handwriting, was a single line she'd overlooked. I documented everything. The recordings are in the place only a baker would look. Julia's breath stopped. Recordings. Elena had proof. And she'd hidden it somewhere in this building. Somewhere only a baker would think to look. Julia stood, her exhaustion forgotten. She walked through the ruined bakery, her mind racing. Where would a baker hide something? The pantry? Too obvious. The storage room? Already cleared. Then her eyes landed on the oven. The massive brick oven where she'd found the lockbox. The place only a baker would look. Not in the oven. Under it, Julia dropped to her knees and ran her hands along the base of the oven. Brick? Mortar? Soot? Then her fingers found a seam. A loose brick. She pulled it free. Behind it, wedged in the space between the oven's foundation and the floor, was a small black device, a digital voice recorder. Julia pulled it out with trembling hands. The screen was cracked but intact. A single red light blinked when she pressed the power button. Audio files. Dozens of them. Dated from 6 months ago to 2 days before the fire. Julia pressed play on the first file. Static. Then voices. A woman's voice, Elena's calm but tense. "Mr. Cross, I already told you, I'm not selling." A man's voice, smooth and cold. "Elena, you're making this harder than it needs to be." Julia's hands shook as the conversation continued. Threats. Promises. The slow escalation from business offer to intimidation. She scrolled to the last file. Dated 2 days before the fire. Elena's voice, alone this time, shaking. "If anyone finds this, please, Vincent Cross burned down my bakery. He threatened my life. And if you're hearing this, it means he succeeded." The recording ended. Julia sat in the darkness, the device clutched in her hand. Elena had known. She'd known what was coming. And she'd left the proof behind. Now Julia held it. The evidence that could destroy Vincent Cross. Or get her and Lily killed. Julia listened to every recording. All 43 files. Hours of evidence. Threats. Extortion. Vincent Cross's voice, cold and calculated, detailing exactly how he'd handled other business owners who refused his offers. By the time she finished, dawn was breaking through the bakery windows. Her hands were numb. Her eyes burned. But she knew what she had to do. That morning, Julia sent Lily to stay with a neighbor, a kind woman 2 streets over, who asked no questions when Julia said she needed help for a few days. "Is everything okay?" the woman asked, concern creasing her face. "It will be," Julia said, though she didn't know if that was true. She hugged Lily tight before letting her go. "I'll see you soon, baby. I promise." "You're scaring me, Mom." "I know. But I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Lily nodded, tears in her eyes. "I trust you." After Lily left, Julia sat in the empty bakery and pulled out her phone. She searched. Legal aid near me. The first result was a nonprofit law office 15 minutes away, specializing in tenant rights, employment discrimination, and whistleblower protection. Julia dialed the number before she could change her mind. A woman answered. "Community Legal Aid. This is Rachel. Hi. I need help. I have evidence of a crime, but I don't know what to do with it." There was a pause. "What kind of crime?" "Arson. Extortion. Maybe murder." Another pause, longer this time. "Can you come in today?" "Yes." 2 o'clock. Bring everything you have. The legal aid office was cramped and underfunded, donated furniture, walls that needed paint, a reception desk held together with duct tape. But the woman who met Julia there, attorney Rachel Diaz, had eyes that said she'd seen everything and believed in fighting anyway. Julia sat across from her in a small conference room and laid it all out. The lockbox, the money, Elena's letter, the voice recorder with 43 files of evidence. Rachel listened without interrupting, her expression growing graver with each detail. When Julia finished, Rachel picked up the recorder and turned it over in her hands. "This is serious," she said quietly. "If what you're telling me is true, Vincent Cross committed arson, extortion, and potentially caused Elena Vasquez's death. It's true. It's all on there." Rachel connected the recorder to her laptop and listened to 3 files, her jaw tightening with each one. Finally, she stopped the playback and looked at Julia. "This is enough to bring him down, but you need to understand what you're walking into. I know it's dangerous." "It's more than dangerous." Rachel leaned forward. "Cross has money, influence, and lawyers who will do everything they can to destroy your credibility. They'll dig into your life. question your motives, paint you as someone trying to extort him. I don't care. You should care, because this won't just affect you. It'll affect your daughter. Julia's chest tightened. Lily's already at risk. He knows her name. He knows where we live. If I do nothing, we're not safe anyway. Rachel studied her for a long moment. You're right. Which is why we need to do this the right way. Federal investigation, whistleblower protection. We go to the FBI with this evidence, and they open a case. Will that keep us safe? Safer than going public on your own. Rachel pulled a form from her desk drawer. But I won't lie to you, Julia. This is going to be hard. It's going to take months. And there are no guarantees. Julia looked at the recorder on the desk. She thought about Elena, who'd tried to fight alone and lost. She thought about Lily, growing up in a world where people like Cross always won because no one was brave enough to stop them. She thought about the $47,000 sitting in the lockbox upstairs, enough to disappear, start over, pretend none of this had ever happened. But Elena's voice echoed in her mind. Please, don't let him win. Julia picked up the pen. What do I need to sign? If you've been following Julia's journey and believe that one person's courage can change everything, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. Because what happens next will show you what real justice looks like when someone finally refuses to stay silent. 3 hours later, Julia walked out of the legal aid office with a plan. Rachel would contact the FBI's Public Corruption Unit, present the evidence, request protection for Julia and Lily while the investigation proceeded. It would take time, maybe weeks before anything happened. But it was the right path. The only path. Julia drove back to the bakery as the sun began to set. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Time's up. Last chance. Sell tonight or face the consequences. Julia stared at the message. Then she typed back, I'm not selling, and I'm not running. Do your worst. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, a response. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. Julia's hands shook as she read it. She pulled into the alley behind the bakery and sat in her car, engine off, trying to steady her breathing. She'd just declared war on one of the most powerful men in the city. A man who'd already killed to protect his empire. What had she done? Her phone rang, making her jump. Rachel's name appeared on the screen. Julia answered. Hello? The FBI wants to meet. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Rachel's voice was urgent. They listened to the recordings. They're opening an investigation. Julia's breath caught. They believe me? They believe the evidence. This is real, Julia. You're going to testify. They're going to take Cross down. What about protection? They're sending someone tonight. An agent will be outside your building until this is over. Relief washed over Julia. So intense her eyes burned. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet. This is just the beginning. After they hung up, Julia sat in the car for a long time. The sky had turned deep purple, stars beginning to appear. She thought about Elena, who'd died fighting alone. Now Julia wouldn't be alone. She had allies, protection, a chance to finish what Elena had started. She got out of the car and walked to the bakery's back entrance. But as she reached for the door, she smelled it. Smoke. Julia's blood turned to ice. She yanked the door open. Inside, flames licked up the walls of the bakery. Small, but growing fast. Someone had started a fire. And they'd done it while she was gone. Julia grabbed the fire extinguisher from her car and ran inside. The flames were concentrated near the back wall, right where the brick oven stood. They wanted to destroy the evidence. But Julia had already moved it. She sprayed foam across the burning wood, choking on smoke, her eyes streaming. The fire fought back, hungry and deliberate, but it was small, contained. Someone had set it to send a message, not destroy the building. Not yet. Within minutes, she'd beaten it down to smoldering embers. Julia stood in the smoke-filled bakery, extinguisher in hand, her whole body shaking. Her phone rang. "Julia!" Rachel's voice was tight. "The FBI agent just arrived. He said there's smoke. Are you okay?" "Someone started a fire." "Get out. Now. The agent is coming in." Seconds later, a man in a dark suit appeared at the door, badge out. FBI. Miss Martinez? Julia nodded, unable to speak. "You're safe now. We've got eyes on this building and officers en route. No one's getting near you." Julia sank onto the floor, her legs giving out. It was over. They'd tried to scare her, tried to burn her out like they'd burned Elena. But they were too late. Within 48 hours, everything changed. The FBI moved fast. Armed with Elena's recordings and Julia's testimony, they executed search warrants across Vincent Cross's properties. They found documents, financial records, communications with city officials who'd helped bury investigations. The case exploded across local news. Local developer arrested on arson extortion charges. FBI raids cross-development properties. Whistleblower testimony exposes decade of corruption. Julia watched the coverage from a safe house the FBI had arranged a small apartment across town, where she and Lily stayed under protection. On screen, Vincent Cross was led from his office in handcuffs, his expensive suit rumpled, his face pale with rage. 3 of his associates were arrested alongside him. The charges were staggering: arson, extortion, conspiracy to commit murder, witness intimidation. Julia watched it all with a strange numbness. She'd won. Elena's death would finally have justice, but the victory felt hollow. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every sound made her jump. Cross's lawyers were already threatening countersuits, defamation, harassment, and even from jail. His reach was long. Threatening messages appeared on social media. Anonymous calls to the safe house number that shouldn't have been public. "You're dead. Just wait. He'll get out. And when he does," Rachel assured her the threats were empty, that Cross would never see freedom again. But Julia couldn't shake the feeling that she'd traded one nightmare for another. 2 weeks after the arrests, Julia returned to the bakery for the first time. FBI agents had cleared it, deemed it safe. But stepping inside felt like entering a tomb. The fire damage from the second attempt was minimal, but the smell of smoke lingered, a reminder of how close she'd come to losing everything. Julia stood in the center of the empty space, looking at the brick oven. The place where Elena had hidden her last hope. The place where Julia had found her own courage. She was about to leave when she heard footsteps behind her. Julia spun, her pulse spiking. An elderly woman stood in the doorway. Late 60s, silver hair pulled back, eyes red from crying. "I'm sorry," the woman said, her voice breaking. "I didn't mean to startle you. My name is Maria Vasquez." Julia's breath caught. Elena's mother. Maria nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I saw the news. What you did. What you risked. I'm so sorry about your daughter." "Don't be sorry." Maria stepped closer, her hands trembling. "For 2 years, I thought Elena died because she was careless. Because she made a mistake. The police told me it was an accident, and I believed them." Her voice cracked. "I buried my daughter thinking she'd failed, that she'd been reckless." "She wasn't," Julia said firmly. "She was brave. She tried to fight, and they killed her for it." Maria covered her mouth, sobbing. "I know that now, because of you." You gave me the truth. You gave me back my daughter's honor. Julia's own tears fell freely. She saved me. Her letter, her evidence, it gave me the strength to fight when I had nothing left. Maria reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "This is for you," she said, pressing it into Julia's hands. "I can't." "Please, Elena would have wanted you to have it." Julia opened the envelope with shaking fingers. Inside was a deed. "To the bakery. After Elena died, the property went to me," Maria explained. "I couldn't bear to come here, couldn't bear to sell it to the people who killed her. So it sat empty, waiting." She looked around the ruined space, her expression softening. "But now it can be something good again. Something Elena would be proud of." "I don't understand." "It's yours, Julia. Free and clear. No mortgage, no strings." Maria's smile was bittersweet. "And this?" She pulled out a check from the envelope. $47,000. "Elena's life insurance," Maria said. "I never touched it. It felt wrong, taking money from her death. But you finished her fight. You deserve this." Julia stared at the check, her vision blurring. "I can't accept this." "You already did." Maria squeezed her hand. "Elena would want you to build something beautiful here. Something that lasts. Will you do that for her?" Julia looked at the brick oven, then at Maria's face, so much like her daughter's in the photograph. "Yes," Julia whispered. "I will." Maria hugged her tight, and they stood together in the ruins, two women connected by loss and courage. When Maria finally left, Julia sat alone on the bakery floor, the deed and check in her lap. She thought about Elena, who'd fought alone and lost, and about herself, who'd fought with Elena's strength and won. The bakery could be rebuilt now, not as it was, but as something new, something that honored the woman who'd refused to surrender. Julia pulled out her phone and called Rachel. "I want to do this right," she said. "I want to restore the bakery, but I want it to mean something." "What are you thinking?" Julia looked at Elena's photograph, still tucked in her pocket. A community space. Affordable food. Job training for people who need a second chance. A place that fights back against people like Cross by building something they can't destroy. Rachel was quiet for a moment. Then, "Elena would have loved that." "Yeah," Julia said, smiling through tears. "She would have." 6 months later, Julia stood on a ladder, painting the last section of the bakery's front wall. The color was warm yellow, the same shade Elena had chosen for the original awning. Lily sat on the sidewalk below, sketching the building in her notebook. "Mom, it looks like the picture," she said, comparing her drawing to the photograph they'd framed and hung inside. Julia climbed down and stood beside her daughter, studying their work. The bakery had been transformed. New windows, repaired brick, a hand-painted sign above the door that read, "Elena's Legacy, Community Bakery and Cafe." Beneath it, in smaller letters, "In memory of those who fight for what's right." "Yeah, baby," Julia said, her throat tight. "It does." The renovation had taken 4 months. Julia hired local workers, some who'd known Elena, others who'd heard her story and wanted to help. The brick oven was restored to working condition, the kitchen rebuilt with equipment that gleamed under new lights, the dining area filled with mismatched tables and chairs donated by neighbors. It wasn't fancy, but it was real. Every morning, Julia baked bread using recipes she'd found in Elena's old notebooks, tucked away in a cabinet upstairs. Sourdough, ciabatta, sweet rolls that filled the building with warmth. She hired 3 staff members, all people who needed a second chance. A formerly incarcerated woman learning to bake, a teenager aging out of foster care, a veteran struggling to adjust to civilian life, Elena's legacy wasn't just a bakery. It was proof that broken things could be rebuilt into something beautiful. Opening day arrived on a crisp Saturday morning. Julia stood behind the counter, her hands shaking as she unlocked the front door. She'd placed Elena's photograph on the wall behind the register, surrounded by dried flowers and a small plaque. Elena Vasquez, 1991, 2023. She fought for what was right. People began arriving before the sun had fully risen. Neighbors, strangers who'd read about the story in the news, former customers of Elena's who'd grieved when the original bakery burned. An elderly man approached the counter, his eyes damp. I used to come here every Sunday. Elena always remembered my order, blueberry scone and black coffee. Julia smiled. Then that's what you'll have today, on the house. As she handed him the scone made from Elena's recipe, he looked at the photograph on the wall. She would have loved this, he said quietly. Thank you for bringing her back. By noon, the bakery was full. Laughter echoed off the walls. The smell of fresh bread mixed with coffee. Children colored at tables while their parents talked. Julia watched from behind the counter, overwhelmed. Lily appeared at her side, tugging her sleeve. Mom, look! She pointed to the window. Outside, a small crowd had gathered around a makeshift memorial someone had created on the sidewalk. Flowers, candles, notes written on scraps of paper. Julia stepped outside to read them. Thank you for not giving up. Elena's story saved my family from a predatory landlord. We fought back because of you. Courage is contagious. Thank you for proving that. Julia's vision blurred. She knelt down and added her own note to the pile. Elena, I finished what you started. I hope I made you proud. Julia. When she stood, Maria was there. Elena's mother had come every week during the renovation, bringing old photos, sharing stories, helping Julia understand the woman who'd saved her without ever meeting her. Now Maria pulled Julia into a hug. She's here, she whispered. I can feel her. Me too, Julia said. That evening, after the last customer left, Julia and Lily sat alone in the quiet bakery. Lily leaned against her mother's shoulder. Are we going to be okay now? Julia thought about the question. 6 months ago, she'd been terrified, desperate. One eviction notice away from losing everything. Now she owned a bakery, had money in the bank, a future that didn't involve choosing between rent and food. But more than that, she had purpose. Yeah, baby, Julia said. We're going to be okay. Because of the money Elena left us? No. Julia looked at her daughter's face so much wiser than 9 years should allow. Because we learned something important. What? That sometimes the greatest gift isn't what people leave behind. It's the courage to finish what they started. Lily was quiet for a moment. Then, do you think Elena knows we finished her fight? Julia looked at the photograph on the wall. Elena's smile, her bright eyes, the pride in her expression as she stood in front of the bakery she'd built from nothing. I think she does, Julia said. They sat together as twilight deepened outside, the bakery glowing warm around them. Julia thought about the lockbox in the oven, the money, the recordings, the letter that had changed everything. Elena had hidden her last hope in the one place that might survive a fire, and it had. Not just the evidence, but the belief that one person's courage could light the way for someone else. That fighting for what was right mattered, even when you didn't live to see the victory. That justice delayed wasn't justice denied, as long as someone was brave enough to demand it. Julia stood and walked to the brick oven, running her hand along its surface. Thank you, she whispered. And in the quiet bakery, surrounded by the smell of bread and hope, she could have sworn she heard an answer. You're welcome. The truth doesn't always come with power or money attached. Sometimes it comes wrapped in ash, hidden in an oven, waiting for someone brave enough to let it burn everything down so something better can rise.